that said police officers shall not share information about immigration status with ICE unless, and there were 6 things listed, you know, a previously deported felon, a gang member, a violent criminal who had committed a crime with a gun, somebody who was engaged in human trafficking. Those were the things that we were required to notify ICE under our own policy, a policy that predated me. So the city attorney office opined that we could not retain the shall not part, shall not share immigration enforcement unless you have these crimes. And they recommended language that just basically said, just list the times you will. Okay, so we shall under the following circumstances. That's the change. All right, city attorney said, you're in compliance now. I will notify the federal government that you could receive those funds. Keep in mind, it was $500,000 now, but we're eligible for a $6 million grant next month and potentially tens of millions of dollars of grants coming to the city generally. So this was an important thing. So there were meetings held with the city attorney's office, executive director of the Fire and Police Commission, members of my police department, people from the city's Intergovernmental Relations Bureau, talking about how to devise this policy, how to get it certified in time, and how it would go into effect. The how it goes into effect is important because my policies can go by rule into effect one of 2 ways. One is I submit it to the Fire and Police Commission director, and he or she makes a decision to present it to the full board. Then they have a hearing in 2 weeks and take public comment and so on. The other way, under the same rule, Rule 4 of the FPC, says that they can receive my SOPs, and the director and chair can decide whether or not it merits full board hearing or is a fairly straightforward technical change to an existing policy that doesn't change philosophy, all right? At all of those meetings, the FPC director represented to the city attorney's office, my assistant chief, as well as IRG, that it was fine with her that once we got the policy set, they would accept it 15 days in advance and it would go into effect because they saw no significant changes in the intent of the policy. We're not doing immigration enforcement, made clear we don't do immigration enforcement, but we would notify the feds when we had a serious bad guy. So that's how we left it. And then, of course, other events intruded. Well, a briefing was held. Alderman Perez, understandably, the word had gotten out that there were going to be policy changes, there were going to be changes to the policy document. So a meeting was held to brief him and the director of LULAC and the director of Voces La Frontera, and it was presented to them, and they took great umbrage. There had been a change, nobody had told them, and almost immediately there were demonstrations making all kinds of wild accusations against the administration that there'd been some sort of dramatic change to the policy. So it became political. All well and good, let the political process work. My work was done. I presented a policy that met standards. FPC director had decided to just accept it as a technical change. Now there were political conversations about negotiating wordsmithing changes to placate the advocacy community that was concerned. And so while I was on vacation, I'm literally on the phone with the mayor's office saying, okay, well, just don't change the 6 things, the 6 really bad guys, we still need to do that. If you need to make other changes, that's your call, because ultimately the feds are going to have to certify it. So they made a few word changes. Instead of being shall not, unless, when it became shall when, they negotiated shall not unless with discretion. Okay. Fine, and that's what was presented to the FPC at the last meeting.
If I understand you,
sure.
It's not that based on concerns raised by a majority of Latino groups that they wanted a clarification in the language to not have officers actually enforcing immigration policy. It's just what was said about you when you weren't present at the Fire and Police Commission meetings.
Absolutely. It was clear, based on the transcripts I've seen, as well as having had the misfortune of watching a replay of it, that I was attacked by virtually every member for having behaved in an underhanded, secretive manner about such an essential topic and tried to keep the FPC in the dark and keep the community in the dark. It was as though I woke up one morning and said, You know, I have an idea. How about if I make my governing body hate me and terrify the Latino community? Let me change the policy in secret. I mean, it's absurd. You know, I functioned at the behest of the city government officials who saw this threat to city funding. I did exactly what was requested of me with the full knowledge of the FPC director. I sat across the table at lunch with the FPC chairman and handed him a copy of the policy that had already been emailed, and we talked a little bit about its implementation. At no time did any of them act like they needed to stop the presses. And here's the most important thing of this, all right? No matter what they say, the minute they had the policy in their hands, they had the right to stop its implementation, to postpone its implementation, to call a special meeting, or to put it on the agenda for a subsequent meeting, all right? My work was done. It was entirely their judgment call what to do with it. So to pretend that, well, they got it too late for a meeting or we didn't know soon enough, it's just not true.
So were you thrown under the bus?
I was, well, you know, for some reason, a lot of people needed to become heroes, and I apparently therefore had to fulfill the role of villain. I have no understanding of it. I don't think the FPC members are aware of all this. I think whoever briefed them dreadfully, and I don't know who did it, but clearly their attitude, their words, their anger had to be based on a dreadful briefing and a total misreading of the facts of the case. And there's just too many people who are sitting around this table for it to be a he said, she said deal. All right? There's just too many other city officials part of this conversation.
So do you believe there's a conspiracy to drive you out from your position?
Well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. What I will say is I'll stick to the facts of this issue, and I think that there's been misinformation that has damaged my relationship with the people that govern me. And I have to believe that some of the pointedness of the directive about the pursuit policy threatening me with discipline is related to some ambient mistrust that the members of that commission have for me.
Well, let's talk about